All right. All right. This is epic. We are live for the first time. We are literally live, as in live streaming. I feel so good to be doing this. This is amazing. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the stream. Even though there's no one on the stream, it's okay. Welcome to the stream. This is the beginning of something fruitful, something I am going to enjoy for as long as I'll be doing this because spirituality itself is me through in and throughout, and I love this stuff. Um, and so, welcome. If you find value here, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this channel with as many people as you can. Ultimately, the goal is to wake up as many people as possible, primarily so that you know we could keep building the spiritual space, because the reality is without people like us, this world will fall into deep chaos. So we need to wake up as many people as possible. Okay, we have to find the others, we have to wake the others. And so there's a couple of things I do here. Particularly, I go through old texts like this, mystical texts, hermetic texts, ancient texts, primarily so that I can help you further expand your spiritual understanding and also help myself. And of course, I do other videos as well. The typical YouTube video, just make it look good and all that good stuff. But primarily, this channel is new for me, and I'm looking forward to growing it and having a good time at it. And like I said, if you find value here, please like, subscribe, and share the channel with as much people as you can. Where we left off last time, we barely touched on the introduction of this book. So today we're going to go in a little bit further. We're going to go through a couple of the verses, probably like two of the verses. Well, primarily, we're going to read them, see what the author has to say, and I'll give my own explanation and understanding of what he had to say. So please just enjoy the stream and welcome, and thanks for being here. All right, let's dive right on in. Examination of the golden verses, explanation and developments. The golden verses of Pythagoras, of the Pythagoreans. Ooh, I love saying that name. Also, I don't at the same time because I always mix it up. But to say it properly, it's Pythagoreans. Okay, and just to give you an overview, the Pythagoreans are a group of, or a secret order that was led by Pythagoras. And a lot of us don't know this, but Pythagoras was part of a secret society or a secret order of spiritual teachers. Okay, but this book will give us a little bit, shed a little bit more light on that as we digress, and it'll help you to better understand that, you know, some of the great people of our past are actually spiritual people, and they became great because they were spiritual. Actually, a lot of great people, and you'll be surprised to know how many people were spiritual. So let's dive right in. So the ancient the ancients had the habit of comparing with gold all that they deemed without defects and preeminently beautiful. Thus, by the Golden Age, they understood the age of virtue and of happiness, and by the golden verses, the verses wherein was concealed the most pure doctrine. They constantly attributed these verses to Pythagoreans, or to Pythagoras. Not that they believed that the philosopher had himself composed them, but because they knew that the disciple that the disciple whose work they were had revealed the exact doctrine of his master and had based them upon maxims issued from his mouth. Okay? This disciple, commendable through his learning and especially through the devotion to the precepts of Pythagoras, was called Lysis. After the death of this philosopher, and while his enemies momentarily had raised at Cortona and at Metaponte that terrible perception which cost the lives of so great a number of Pythagoreans, crushed beneath the debris of their burnt school, or constrained to die of hunger in the temple of the Muse. Lysis happily escaped from these disasters. So there's something I want to touch on here. They mentioned golden age and everything. They relating everything perfect in gold, mainly because a lot of people today don't realize the symbology of gold and the importance of gold, because a lot of times we'll see things symbolized with gold or wrapped in gold and not fully understand meaning behind it, and you'll find that a lot in the spiritual, in your spiritual studies as well, because a lot of the teachers talk about things being gold and wrapped in gold, and the gold fluid within your brain, and all this good stuff, right? So gold is very important to them as it is to us today, and it symbolizes basically perfection, and such. Okay. Also, you mentioned here the golden age. This is something we have to keep in mind because now we are in our age. This is our time. This is our time now to come online. For so many years, the spiritual community and the spiritual, highly spiritual beings have been shunned and hid under a blanket. And our time is coming now for us to rise up again. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Yuga cycles, explained beautifully by the Hindus. You know, we are coming out of the dark age, the bronze age, and now we're going into a golden age. And the evils of this world is not going to hand over the rulership of this world to us. We have to unfortunately take it from them, but not in a forceful way, but in a more intelligent and spiritually enlightened way. And we'll do that when the time is right. But for now, we need troops. We need soldiers. We need you to come online. We need more people like you and myself who are ready to, raise their vibration and raise themselves up. So, Lysis happily escaped from these disasters, retired into Greece, where wishing to spread the sect of Pythagoras, to whose principles Columns Columns had been attached. He felt it necessary to set up a sort of formulary which would contain the basis of morals and the principal rules of conduct given by this celebrated man. It is to this generous movement that we owe the philosophical verses that I have essayed to translate into French. These verses, called the Golden for the reason I have given, contain the sentiments of Pythagoras and all that remain to us, really authentic, concerning one of the greatest men of antiquity, Hierocles, who has transmitted them to us with a long and masterly commentary, assures us that they do not contain, as one might believe, the sentiment of one in particular, but the doctrine of all the sacred corps of Pythagoreans and the voice of all the assemblies. He adds that there existed a law which prescribed that each one, every morning upon rising and every evening upon retiring, should read these verses as the oracles of Pythagorean school. One sees in reality by many passages from Cicero, Horace, Seneca, and other writers worthy of belief that this law was still vigorously executed in their time. We know by the testimony of Galen in his treatise on the understanding and the cure of maladies of the soul, that he himself read every day, morning and evening, the verses of Pythagoras, and that after having read them, he recited them by heart. However, I must not neglect to say that Lysis, who is the author of them, obtained so much celebrity in Greece that he was honored as the master and friend of Epaminondas. If his name has not been attached to this work, it is because at the epoch when he wrote it, the ancient custom still existed of considering things and not individuals. It it was with the doctrine of Pythagoras that one was concerned, and not with the talent of Lysis, which had made it known. So Lysis himself stated, "Look, I didn't write this stuff. Okay, it came from the group, from the secret order, from the Pythagoreans." Okay, so I'm happy he did that. He's not taking claim to something that doesn't belong to him, right? The disciples of a great man had no other name than his. All their works were attributed to him. This is an observation sufficiently important to make, and which explains how Vyasa in India, Hermes in Egypt, Orpheus in Greece have been the supposed authors of such a multitude of books that the lives of many men would not even suffice to read them. I know, because it's not for everybody. In my translation, I have followed the Greek texts, such as wait. Okay. All right. In my translation, I have followed the Greek text, such as cited at the head of the commentary of Heracles, commentated on by the son of Casaubon, and interpreted into Latin by J. Curtius. I am gonna butcher these names. Forgive me. This is old English. London edition, 1673. This work, like all those which remain to us of the ancients, has been the subject of a great many critical and grammatical discussion. In the first place, one must before everything else be assured of the material part. This part is today as authentic and correct as it is possible to be. And although there exist still several different readings, they are of too little importance for me to dwell upon. It is not my affair, and besides, chacun doit faire son métier, that is in French, I believe. That of the grammarian has ended where it ought to end. For how can man ever expect to advance if he never is willing to try some new things which is offered? I shall not therefore make any criticizing remarks concerning the text, for I consider this text sufficiently examined. Neither will I make any notes concerning the commentaries properly so called on these 71 lines, for I think it is sufficient having those of Heracles, of Vitus Amorbathius, Theodore Marcellus, Henry Brum, Michael Neander, Jean Strassilius, Gil Homney, oh my god, and all these other guys, etc. As I stated, I shall make examination rather than commentaries, and I will give regarding the inner meaning of the verses all the explanation that I believe useful for their complete development. um, let's just carry on, because I could get into explaining, but let's just carry on. It's better that we just carry on. Okay. Render to the immortal gods the consecrated cult. Guard thy faith. This is so beautiful. But let's hear his explanation, and then I'll give you my thoughts and ideas about it. Pythagoras, of whom a modern savant, otherwise most estimable, has rather thoughtlessly reproached with being a fanatical and superstitious man, begins his teachings nevertheless by laying down a principle of universal tolerance. He commands his disciples to follow the cult established by the laws, whatever this cult may be, and to adore the gods of their country, whatever those gods may be, enjoining them only to guard afterwards their faith, that it that is to remain inwardly faithful to his doctrine and never to divulge the mysteries. So it sounds like these guys were practicing traditional religion as they were at the time, but in secret practicing their mysteries. And it's understandable because around this time probably, or a little bit before or after, we were familiar with the Crusades, right? Where they were burning people at the stake and killing them for believing anything that's pagan. And obviously, pagan means anything that's not Christian or Islamic or such. Anything that you believe that's outside of these religious sects, they would kill you for it, right? And so they had mentioned cults a couple of times, and I know I addressed this in the previous video, but I'm going to say it again. Cult is just the word used to best describe the order and the secret groups that these guys held at the time. So it's not to say that cult is a bad thing. It's just today's society label cult as same as conspiracy theorists. Okay, so it's not to say that cult is a bad thing, but these are groups and sects that practice their belief in secret. Lysis, in writing these opening lines, adroitly conceals herein a double meaning. By the first he command, as I have said, tolerance and reverence for the Pythagorean, and following the example of the Egyptian priests, established two doctrines, the one apparent and vulgar, conformable to the law, the other mysterious and secret, analogous to the faith. By the second meaning, he reassures the suspicious people of Greece, who, according to their slanders, which were in circulation, might have feared that the new sect would attack the sanctity of their gods. This tolerance on the one hand, and this reverence on the other were no more than what they would be today. The Christian religion, exclusively and severe, has changed all other ideas in this respect by admitting only one soul doctrine in one unique church. This religion has necessarily confused tolerance with indifference or coldness, and reserve with heresy or hypocrisy. But in the spirit of polytheism, these same things take on another color. A Christian philosopher could not, without perjuring himself and committing a frightful impiety, bend the knee in China before Kong Shui, nor offer incense to Shanghai, nor to Tian. He could neither. Piety, piety means religious belief. Frightful impiety means, wrong religious belief ultimately. He could neither render in India homage to Krishna, nor present himself at Benares as a worshipper of Vishnu. He could not even, although recognizing the same God as the Jews and Muslims. Does he mean to say Muslims? Muslims. That's what the word says. Take part in their ceremonies, or what is still more, worship this God with the Arians, the Lutherans, or the Calvinist, if he were a Catholic. This belongs to the very essence of his cult. A Pythagorean philosopher did not recognize in the least these formidable barriers, which hem in the nations, as it were, isolate them and make them worse than enemies. The gods of the people were in his eyes the same gods, and this cosmopolitan dogmas condemned no one to eternal damnation. From one end of the earth to the other, he could cause incense to rise from the altar of the divinity, under whatever name, under whatever form it might be worshipped, and render to it the public cult established by the law. So it seems as though what he's saying is that these Pythagoreans would worship or would have their beliefs and practice them as if they're practicing any other belief or any other religion, mainly to keep themselves hidden from those that would persecute them. So where were we? Rendered to the public cult established by the law. And this is the reason polytheism was not, in their opinion, what it has become in ours: an impious and gross idolatry, a cult inspired by the infernal adversary to seduce men and to claim for itself the honors which are due only to the divinity. It was particularization of the universal being, a personification of its attributes and its faculties. Before Moses, none of the theocratic legislators had thought it well to present for the adoration of the people the supreme God, unique and uncreated in his unfathomable universality. The Indian Brahmas, who can be considered as the living types of all the sages and all the pontiffs of the world, never permit themselves, even in this day when their great age has effaced the traces of their ancient signs, to utter the name of God, principle of all. They are content to meditate upon its essence in silence, and to offer sacrifices to its sublimest emanations. The Chinese sages act the same with regard to the principal cause, that must be neither named nor defined. The followers of Zoroaster, who believe that the two universal principles of good and evil, Ormuz and Ahriman, emanate from this unfathomable cause, are content to designate it under the name of eternity. So different belief system, throughout the world we have different belief system, different cultures, different people who call the source or the creator or eternity, they call it different things, but they all believe in the same thing. And this is the problem with religion, is that religion will never accept anything other than what they tell you. And that's the problem with it, because how can you learn something new if you're not open to learning or hearing something new? How can you hear God talking to you if he was to speak to you in a different language? Just to paint a religious idea here. If Jehovah or Jesus were to talk to a Christian or Catholic, in a different tongue, they wouldn't even be open to it, right? Suppose the only language that Jesus or Jehovah knows is, let's say, ancient Sanskrit, and he came to you speaking in Sanskrit. Most religious people will say, blasphemy, this is the devil. He speak a blasphemous tongue, and they wouldn't be open to realizing that is the creator speaking to them. And so similarly, you know, all these different belief systems believed in the same thing but called it different names. The Egyptians so let me digress. The Egyptians so celebrated for their wisdom, the extent of their learning, and the multitude of their divine symbols, honored with silence the God, principle, and source of all things. They never spoke of it, regarding it as an inaccessible to all the researches of man. And Orpheus, their disciple, first author of the brilliant mythology of the Greeks, Orpheus, who seemed to announce the soul of the world as creator of this same God from which it emanated, said plainly, I never see this being surrounded with a cloud. Moses, as I have said, was the first who made a public dogma of the unity of God, and who what what up to that time had been buried in seclusion of the sanctuaries. For the principal tenets of the mysteries, those upon which reposed all others, were the unity of God and homogeneity of nature. It is true that Moses, in making this disclosure, permitted no definition, no reflection, either upon the essence or upon the nature of this unique being. This is very remarkable. Before him, in all the known world, and after him, save in Judea, where more than one cloud still darkened the idea of divine unity until the establishment of Christianity. That's in a paragraph. Before him in all the known world, and after him, the divinity was considered by the theosophists of all nations, under two relations, primarily as unique, secondarily as infinite. As unique, preserved under the seal of silence to the contemplation and meditation of the sages. As infinite, delivered to the veneration and invocation of the people. Now, the unity of God resides in his essence, so that the vulgar can never, in any way, either conceive or understand. Oof, let me say that again. Let's go back. Now, the unity of God resides in his essence, so that the vulgar can never, in any way, either conceive or understand. So, this is for the perverted minds. You will never get this. You will never get it. If you're sitting here and none of this makes sense to you, you got some cleaning up to do with yourself. Um, and ultimately, if you have a vulgar mind, you will never conceive what is being said or understood. It is written in the biblical text, those with eyes to see, let him see, and those with ears to hear, let him hear. This is not for everybody. You must have the prerequisite understanding in order to decipher what is being said here. And I'm also going to reference the Bible a lot when I speak, mainly because the Bible is not written for the average individual. Even though Christians read it, they have no idea what is being said, right? There's so much symbology and underlining meaning that they will never get it, because it's not for the vulgar ears. It's for the enlightened ones, the spiritual ones who are online and can read and decipher these symbols and parables. So let us digress. His infinity consists in his perfections, his faculties, his attributes, of which the vulgar can, according to the measure of their understanding, grasp some feeble emanations, and draw nearer to him by detaching them from the universality, that is, by particularizing and personifying them. This is the particularization and the personification which constitutes, as I have said, polytheism. The mass of gods which result from it is an infinite as the divinity itself whence it had birth. Each nation, each people, each city adopts at its liking those of the divine faculties which are best suited to its character and its requirements. That is true. because attributes of God in, let's say, in the northern part of the world are different from attributes of God in the southern part of the world, right? Because we all attribute different things to God. And that's mainly because, in different parts of the world, God means different thing to us. Somebody in Africa will give the aspect of rain some particular name because they're probably going to be calling on that person fairly often. Or somebody in the northern part of the world will give it some aspect of the sun because they're going to be calling on that aspect of God fairly often to bring summer in, right? So let's just keep that in mind. These faculties, represented by simulacra, become so many particular gods whose variety of names augment the number still further. Nothing can limit this immense theogony, since the primal cause whence it emanates has not done so. The vulgar, lured by the objects which strikes the senses, can become idolatrous, idolatrous, and he does ordinarily. He can even distinguish these objects of his adoration, one from another, and believe that they really exist as many gods as statues. But the sage, the philosopher, the most ordinary man of letters does not fall into this error. He knows with Plutarch that different places and names do not make different gods, that the Greeks and the barbarians of the nations of the north and those of the south adore the same divinity. He restores easily that infinity of attributes to the unity of the essence, and has he honored remnants of the ancient Sramanas, the priests of the Burmans, still do today. He worships God, whatever may be the altar, the temple, and the place where he finds himself. This is what was done by the disciples of Pythagoras, according to the commandment of their master. They saw in the gods of the nations the attributes of the ineffable being, which were forbidden, the attributes of the ineffable being which were forbidden them to name. They augmented ostensibly and without the slightest reluctance the number of these attributes of which they recognized the infinite cause. They gave homage to the cult consecrated by the law and brought them all back secretly to the unity which was the object of their faith. Now, that's two verses we went through with the explanation. Honestly, I'm going to leave this here for today, mainly because I don't want to bore you with just reading. All right? I want you to digest a little bit of what is being said here. And just to give you a quick recap, ultimately, the Pythagoreans are a secret order that operated in secret, and mainly they hid their secret in plain sight, so that those who would persecute them would not understand, and a lot of times they would hide their teachings within the plain text. Now, like I said before, these parables and these golden verses, they are filled with so much meaning and so much understanding within them. You have to unfold it to really get the meaning, and that's how they hide their true teaching. And and just take in what was said here today. Sleep on it, maybe rewatch this video. I know I started a lot when I was reading, but again, this is old English. This is not up to date stuff, so it's not easy to let the words flow as if I'm reading a modern book or something like that. But just take in what you can and sit on it, sit in meditation and think about it. That these ancient teachers were, or these men of old, these men of antiquity, were spiritual. They were highly spiritual, especially the one of great sciences. They were highly spiritual, and so they had to hide their sciences, because they feared persecution. And now we live in a day and age where we can fully express these sciences, luckily, because the reason that we're in this day and age is because we are here to revitalize this teaching, revitalize and wake up the sleeping gods that are called man. banish the beast out of man, get rid of the bestial side out of man. Now, I'm not saying to go out there and preach like a preacher or a pastor, but what I'm saying is that your light, the way in which you live your life, will be a representation and a good way for others to follow, and others will want to copy you and to be like you. So you must raise your understanding of this wisdom, raise your vibration, and live in such a high state that you will be a reflection that everyone wants to represent or be like. So I hope this sitting brought value to you. Tomorrow we'll continue from, I guess, from verse 3, and go on some more. And I hope to do better and bring more value to you then. If you like what you see here or you're inspired by anything here, please like, share, subscribe, share the channel. I have to grow this channel. We need to reach more people like you, and that's the goal. I want to grow this channel, and yeah, I need your help to do it. I can't do it on my own. Please like, comment your thoughts, comment your opinions. I will read them and respond. And yeah, thanks, guys. Have a good evening. I'll see you tomorrow.